Well, good morning, everyone. Sunday morning, and as is typical in June, we have clusters of thunderstorms across the central U.S., especially. But before we talk about that, let's update our U.S. tornado count for 2005 so far. This is as of yesterday, the 14th, 1,146. And that red line went above the normal back in mid-March and never really turned back since, and is well above that right now. So the end of that line is right there. 906 is what we typically would see through this many days in a typical year. So yeah, we've been ahead of the curve for a while. Severe weather is shifting. We're starting to see any severe weather probabilities. This is based on climatology from 82 to 2011. And the epicenter is in Kansas now, whereas it was down here about a month and a half ago. And you'll continue to see this move northward. And we're seeing new centers in Ohio and in the southeast. Now, this is starting to get a representation of what starts happening. Actually, all this area right here is that we get these derechos, or these long-lived squall lines that form here and then just kind of move multi-state like that. There's a climatology for that this time of year, so that's why you get some of these secondary bullseyes developing. They're not necessarily as tornadic as they were. They're a little bit more wind-driven, and even the hail probabilities start going down a little bit because you don't have as much cold air aloft anymore, so it becomes more wind than anything else, although this climatology does say any severe probabilities. And I think there might be some specifics on wind, and maybe next time, tomorrow morning, I'll go look that up at the SPC. Anyway, so here is the visible satellite loop, and I went ahead and put the 500 millibar chart on top of that and looped it so that you can kind of see what's going on. The main jet stream flow is up here in the northwest and also through southeastern Canada and a little bit of New England too. These little disturbances here are interesting because a lot of times this time of year now they become driven by the thunderstorms themselves sometimes. So you see a little trough of low pressure here and one here, but this is actually left over from that system that started in Texas days ago. You can still see the rotation for that one. This one, though, is more thunderstorm driven, and so is this little disturbance up here. Let's take a look at 48 hours worth of simulated radar. This is going into the future, showing today's thunderstorm cluster kind of taking out of Oklahoma and drifting into parts of Texas, maybe some leftover activity there in northern Arkansas, another cluster in Iowa, still more forming in Montana. So you get the theme here. Here is the severe thunderstorm outlook. I'll zoom in on that 3 area here in a minute, but I just want to let you know that North Carolina, Virginia has a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather today. And it actually does curve back into northern Arkansas a little bit, covers Dallas, but the main activity is expected through northeast portions of Colorado, a good chunk of South Dakota, Nebraska, and really kind of highlighting that area up to the north. West of there, which is in Montana. We'll take a closer look at that. So it's a level 3 out of 5. Tornado threat minimal on this, but there is a little bit of one. I'll show you in a minute, but it's mostly wind and hail that we expect from these thunderstorms. Billings is included in that. A lot of rural areas of Montana and parts of the Dakotas. Here's the tornado threat. A little bit of that bullseye there again. Coastal areas of Virginia and North Carolina, but that's a 2% chance. Also, this same area, kind of in the core of what we just talked about. This is where the most severe weather was occurring. So you can see the tornadoes are not really contributing significantly to that enhanced risk. But the tornado threat does go down the line a little bit into northeast portions of Colorado. Here is Nadocast for today, kind of emphasizing the tornado risk there. They put it as high as 3% and put a separate bullseye there in northeastern Colorado. And again, that coastal area of Virginia and North Carolina. If we look at the SIPS model for today, it really wants to emphasize most severe weather in Colorado, and hail threats and wind threats would be I think the primary focus of that activity, and just kind of a broad brush forecast for the southeast. Interestingly, they do put a little bit of a 2% tornado probability in northeast Colorado today, so probably want to watch that area a little bit more carefully this afternoon and later this evening. CSU is back, and it may be a coding or a finding error on my part yesterday that I couldn't get that activity up there, but they're emphasizing tornado threats in Montana, although emphasizing is really only amounting to a 2% chance. Really doubling down on the hail in Montana from those supercells. And wind is actually higher here, again, because you remember these thunderstorms out of Oklahoma had that linear look to them, that bow echo kind of look. That's what's producing that. along with that initial activity in the Carolinas as well. So let's go ahead to Monday now. And so for a 2-day severe weather forecast, day 2 for a level 3, that's pretty significant. So South Central and Central Minnesota, including Minneapolis, under the gun for a 3 out of 5 risk for severe weather. This is including a lot of wind, hail, and some tornadoes. I'll show you that threat. This kind of droops down into Kansas and Oklahoma for tomorrow. Let's take a look at that tornado threat. It is a 5% chance right in the enhanced area. So they are worried that some of these thunderstorms, either initially or embedded, will have a 5% probability of a tornado within 25 miles. So that's an area to watch up there in Minnesota. The CSU Outlook pretty much verifies that tornado forecast, moves a little more north. Hits the hail pretty hard in Wyoming, where the upper level temperatures are a little colder. And then the wind threat, again, we're emphasizing areas of bowing echoes and straight line activity, as well as on individual storms that could do that as well. Here's the 500 millibar mean for Monday. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so we still have a healthy jet stream flow here. You need jet stream winds to be fairly strong to organize thunderstorms into supercells, or to help maintain Boeing segments. And what happens in the summer is you start losing your upper level winds and your thunderstorms become more isolated. So that's not the case yet in the northern plains. Certainly, we have enough bulk shear to keep those thunderstorms going for a while. I'm going to take a look at one more thing for Monday. This is the simulated radar, starts at 7 a.m. in the morning. So you see morning activity that moves off to the east, and then you see more activity developing in Minnesota and out through Nebraska as well. I think this stops at about 10 o'clock in the evening. So you can see just a smattering of severe weather possibilities, but any of these linear features or any of these isolated features that happen to develop on Monday. Moving ahead to Tuesday, we're looking at the heart of Kansas, Kansas City, and Des Moines under a 2 out of 5 chance, what is called the slight risk of severe weather. This other green is marginal. They do have names. And they're really just talking about coverage and intensity when they are attempting to explain that. So anyway, this is certainly a frontal system with drooping areas of showers and thunderstorms forecast on Tuesday, which ends up backing into parts of northeast Colorado. I say that because I just looked at the SIPS tornado probability, and they want to put a 5% risk once again in northeast Colorado and a little bit along the main line there around Omaha. If we look at CSU's model, they agree with that tornado assessment from Iowa back to Omaha, parts of Kansas, settling down on the hail probabilities, mostly because the upper level temperatures are not as cold there. And the wind probability, we've covered this, linear thunderstorms that produce straight line winds. The jet stream on Tuesday is looking interesting. By the way, all these are EPS. This is the European Models Ensemble and 500 millibar mean flow. So it's interesting. This is kind of an interesting wind max that's showing up in New Mexico for Tuesday midday. Kind of suggests to me that the severe weather out here could be a little bit more widespread than indicated. They had it over here. I might be more inclined to talk about that area a little bit more on Tuesday. On Wednesday, this is morphed quite a bit. Wednesday's old forecast from 2 days ago was something like this. Now it's really expanded. It includes my town of Springfield, Missouri, and Jefferson City, Columbia, St. Louis, Springfield, Illinois, Chicago, almost to Detroit, Lansing, Indianapolis, South Bend, those areas all under a risk for severe weather on Wednesday. Here's CSU's outlook. This is the SPC forecast I just showed you. They are really emphasizing, this is an all hazards forecast, but 30% probability. SPC pulls the trigger at 15, which is what this is. If they agreed with this, then they would put the next color in there, but they don't yet, and that's okay because this may or may not be accurate. But I put these up here just to give you a kind of a heads up as to what might happen. So the severe weather might get a little more vigorous from St. Louis up to Indianapolis and even covering parts of Ohio on Wednesday. The jet stream flow certainly supports that with a trough of low pressure here, and again those bulk shear winds that are going to support supercells. More heavier winds, stronger winds coming in ashore in the northwest, but nothing unstable up there, so it's not going to produce a severe weather risk. And I do also want to pull and show you this on Thursday. This is unusual, especially this time of year, to go out this far and talk about severe weather hazard. So 15% risk out here in Pennsylvania and Virginia and West Virginia for Thursday. And that's that forecast right there. And they emphasize areas around Philadelphia and maybe Albany, almost to New York City, and getting down to parts of Maryland and the nation's capital. And then 2 more days, Friday here, again, Northern Plains risks, and then on Saturday, almost virtually the same kind of weather pattern. So let's take a look at those NIU models. June 15th, today through the 21st. Again, they want to take that supercell risk down into Kansas and Oklahoma. I was talking about that. Remember that little disturbance I showed you here on Tuesday? I think there might be more room for enhanced severe weather outlooks in that area than maybe some of the outlooks currently indicate. But that's, again, a composite for a 7-day period. Definitely shows a highlight in the northern plains. And then it calms down a little bit June 22nd through the 28th, still an emphasis area in parts of Kansas. And then getting into July, this is June 29th through July 5th, way up into Canada now. Odds are against severe weather, at least organized severe weather in the traditional areas, and has certainly shifted its attention more to the north. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day 1 because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.